And hello and welcome again to the Lunch and Learn with Climate Salad and Talila, who is going to take us through Set Sail for Conversion. Now, before I hand over the mic, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners on the land of which we meet. For me, that's the Gubbi Gubbi people. Wanya Nullam, welcome. I pay my respects to their elders past, present, and joining us today, and honour their continuous connection to country, land and sea, and recognise that our First Nations people were our first climate tech innovators. And there is so much we need to learn and still can. Talila, I'll hand over to you.
Thank you, Charlotte. Great to see everyone, and thank you for joining us. And I love that intro with the Indigenous people. So that was very refreshing. What I'm going to cover today is essentially how to start building a sales engine. And what I mean by a sales engine is a system, a reverse engineered sales system. So I'm going to share my screen and I will talk you through a methodology for doing this highly effectively.
And Talila, I should have asked you before, would you like people to just put questions in the chat or plenty of time for questions later, come off mic, or how would you like to run?
Yes, I think they can put questions in the chat. Jen might be joining us from our team. If you see Jen jumping on, she'll be able to answer questions in the chat, which will be fantastic. I'll just make sure that she's able to join.
She's there. Perfect.
She said she hasn't been let in yet, but she's ready to go.
Oh.
She might not be technically registered. That's Jen and Emple. So if you let her in, she'll answer the questions. Excellent.
Sorry for interrupting. You keep on going.
No worries at all. So what we're going to cover is essentially setting yourself up for consistent conversion. And this is a pain point for many businesses. And when they get it right, the sky's the limit as to what they can achieve. So just a little bit about us. Our company is called Emple. We started about 7 years ago. We started with really hiring great salespeople. We had a system for hiring salespeople in a way that is client focused, not like a recruiter moving people between people, but more, if I was the client, what exactly do I need for this role? We did that for a few years and we were called Epic Sales Group at that time. And then we found that many businesses don't have a good sales system or sales engine. And as a result of that, you can get them a great salesperson, but the salesperson will flounder and struggle. And therefore, we started working very much in process and help them build really good sales conversion engines, basically sales processes. And we're going to talk about how you can do that today and the first step in doing that. We also have another element of our business, which is outsourced sales management and leadership of large teams. We believe that people, process, performance, you get them right, you've got the perfect system for scaling a business. And Emple is empowering people, and that's what we're here to do. And we're very passionate about businesses that are making change, like transformative founders who are actually putting all their energy into the solutions of the future. That's what we're passionate about. So that's what we're going to cover, is reverse engineering your growth. And what do we mean exactly by reverse engineering? We mean, okay, you've got a sales growth target. Maybe your sales growth target is X, but right now that's pie in the sky. What do you need to do in small steps in order to achieve that target? To look at it differently, a child says, I want to be a doctor, what do they have to do to become a doctor? They have to get this grade in university. They then have to go through all of these courses, get this thing, go to the hospital, do this bit here, and then finally they're a GP. So it's the steps. And we're talking about the steps today. So again, small businesses are the world changers. We're very aware. They're like all the great stuff comes from entrepreneurs who are willing to put themselves out there to bring their vision and idea to life, to make, and particularly those who want to make the world a better place. And we're also the ones that have the hardest job in a way, because it's not just that we have our solution, we have to put on all these business hats to get that solution out to market and to get that funding that we need. And that's the piece, right? We've got the solution, we've got the impact vision of what we want to achieve, but what we don't have a lot of times is the resources. Now, once we can get those resources, and more than that, a consistent way of attaining those resources, we can realize that vision. And that's what today is about. So let's talk about how to build a consistent and profitable way of funding our resources. That not only helps those who are bootstrapping, but it absolutely helps those who want funding, because when an investor comes in and sees you've got that consistent and profitable way of funding your growth, they will want to invest. So let's talk about what happens also if we don't reverse engineer before we get into this. Cash flow can be wildly inaccurate, and a lot of times we can run out of money as we're trying to grow and invest in things. Profitability is very hard to control, and our targets are rear view mirrors. In other words, okay, we wanted to sell X, we didn't sell X. Looking backwards, it's a bit late now. All we know is that we didn't sell X. And what can we do about that for Y? It's a very bad way of setting targets. And scaling is so inconsistent that, investors don't see it as a realistic proposition. So let's take a look now at some of the figures, because this is a concern. There are 82% of small businesses that fail due to cash flow problems. We all know that horrible number, I'm sure. It's also interesting that 35% of small businesses, just more than a third, are never profitable at all. And 73% of us are setting incorrect growth targets, which is when being too optimistic, we're not allowing for delivery times of things or sales process times, or perhaps we're not allowing for how much effort it involves to provide a service. That's why that's a big reason why only 8% of us ever get to that 2 million plus mark of a well-established business that's resourced enough to grow further. Now, when we were hiring salespeople as our core thing, we had a lot of founders who would come in to see us and they'd say something like this: we're currently at X revenue, we need to get to Y. Maybe it's 300K, we need to get to 1 million. So I'm not a salesperson, but I managed to get us to 300 annual revenue. I know a salesperson could do a much better job than me. So let's hire a salesperson and they need to make 175 a quarter. Go do that. Hire me a salesperson to go do that. Now, we call this a delusion, and I will show you why very shortly. Now, we also had clients that were a little bit more sophisticated in their approach, and they said something like, our business target is 700K. We've got 2 offerings. You need to sell 40 of these and 80 of these in a year, which is 10 and 20 a quarter to make the money we need. Go do that. Now, it's slightly better because now at least the salesperson knows how many sales they have to make in order to achieve a revenue target, but it's still next to useless. I'm going to show you now, and this is something we look for when we hire for salespeople. If they don't have this, we're worried and we help them to build it. I'm going to show you a reverse engineered sales pipeline. Okay, so let's say the sale is $7,500 in annual recurring revenue, or $7,500 flat. There is a process that we go through to acquire a sale or a client. Whether we've documented it or whether we haven't, we're following some kind of process. Someone comes to us, we connect with them, we have a chat with them, we find out what they need, we talk through our offering. Maybe we then have a formal meeting and we present that offering. If it's a SaaS model, we maybe have a demo. Like, every journey is different, but there are a series of stages. And in those stages, we qualify the buyer qualifies us. The buyer is looking to see that their goals are going to be met, their problems are going to be solved, and their decision criteria, like the right price, I trust these people, whatever, are going to be fulfilled. Now, at the end of that, you will usually send a proposal, agreement, a quote, whatever, maybe just an invoice, and then they'll come on board and then you onboard them, whatever. And that's the process. Now, if you break that process into stages, you are going to be incredibly ahead of the game. And it's the first step towards building a sales engine that is highly successful. So if you take a look here, imagine that for every 10 people that came in the door that inquired or were referred to you, you knew that you'd have a really good initial conversation with about 7. And of those, about half would go on to a full-blown, let's really identify all your needs here, scoped out. Another 65 of those, 65% would go, yes, present me the solution. And of those, 3/4 would say, yep, I want you to send me the proposal. I'll just run it by the board, whatever it is, and I'll get it signed. And of those who requested the proposal, 90% said, yes, they signed. So imagine, I mean, these figures could be anything. These figures could be anything. I totally made them up. But what I'm trying to point out is that there are steps with figures in them, and all CRMs will gather this data for you. You can then work backward and say, okay, I want a target of 300 out of product A, which is 7,500. I know I need to make 40 sales. Based on these metrics, we will need to send 44 proposals. Going backwards, we will need to present it 59 times. Going backwards, we're going to have 91 good discoveries. And going back from that, we have to connect with 182 buyers. We'll need at least 260 leads. Are there variations in this? Absolutely. But we need some form of general guidelines so that we've got some idea of the steps and stages. Also, knowing how long it takes, right? Sometimes there could be a step here that takes a month, or there could be something over here that takes a few weeks, depending on how complex your sale is or how many decision makers you bring in. So the key point there is understand the steps and measure them. There's a lot of reasons for doing this, and I'm now going to go into some of them. For a start, when we hire a salesperson, we're not going to give them just sales quotas or targets, go make 175K. We're going to give them an action plan, right? Say, we're going to provide you with leads, or you have to go get so many leads, whichever one it is. And then we expect you to do this. This is your activity KPIs. You're going to answer inquiries. You're going to have conversations. You're going to do discovery. You're going to present. You're going to set up proposals. You're going to do an onboarding session, whatever it is they've got to do. And this is how much time we expect it to take. And this is how much of your hour is going to be devoted to product A. So that's a bit of an example of how you could give them leading KPIs or leading indicators. Now, the benefit of that is you can see immediately if they're doing them or not. You don't have to wait 3 months later to see if they sold stuff. And you can tell where the problems are. Because if you go back to this, if they're doing really, really well connecting with the buyer and really, really well with this needs discovery, but when they get to the presentation of solutions, nobody's asking for a proposal, something's very wrong here. Right? So you can find the place where there's huge drop-offs and you can go and fix them. And that's really important. Another thing is that you can then budget and forecast more accurately. Things to take in mind, which are often forgotten, are the sales cycle length. So in the last example, it was a 2-month sales cycle. We have to look at past seasonal trends, and we have to remember that people go on holidays and treat December and January as 1 month. So in this case, we'd have 8 months because of the 2 months. If someone was just starting to sell, we'd have 8 months really to sell because of December, January, and those 2 months, and a bit of ramp up time. So I've set a monthly target of 5 for these products, and I've gone, well, filling the pipeline, first sales, still ramping up. Okay, hitting targets. Then we're running into holidays. December and January is kind of a month. There's a bit of a quiet time, and then it's probably going to look like this. So it's very important to understand that's not 75K a quarter. It's very, very different. And from our cash flow point of view, if we can understand and prepare for that, we're going to be in an infinitely better situation. Okay, so another point is that this data that I've said about your steps is easy to gather if you're using any form of CRM and if you're not. So I'm going to give you a tool to use if you're not using a CRM, because I know some of us are still using Excel and so on, and I don't want that to be a barrier to following, this fantastic method. So here is an example of a client journey. It's all in stages here, won and lost. Down the bottom, the CRM is giving a weighted value to each of these stages based on how likely it is that stage will move to the next step. And then you just pull the deal from stage to stage as you go. Now, what it does is provides you with a weighted value of what you can expect, but it also will be calculating your conversions. And I'll show you that in a minute. So while you might think this is 40%, you might actually find in reality it's 53. And later you can update that, and then this will become more and more predictive, this pipeline. If you don't have a sales CRM, you can use Google Sheets, you can use Excel. I'm actually going to give you this tracker, if that's all right with Charlotte, at the end, so that everyone who wants it can go ahead and use it, and I'll run you by it and how to use it as well. Whether you use Excel or whether you use Google Sheets, or whether you use a CRM, you can set up dashboards to view activities and conversions. So you'll be able to see what is the real conversion from stage to stage, and how many activities are we fulfilling, and are we fulfilling the activities that we said? And as I said, we can then go back to where we set up our pipeline and change the deal probability to be infinitely more accurate with the data that we accumulate over time. It's also worth doing your lead sources, because leads ain't leads. We all know that if you got referred by someone who absolutely loves what you do and knows you really well and is a trusted advisor of a client and has been raving about you for the last 6 months to that person, and then tells them all the problems that you're going to solve for them, the chances of you winning that sale are very high. Whereas if someone just looked you up on Google and found you anonymously, it could be a completely different matter. So even though we said we needed X number of leads, it's even better to break those leads into quality and quantity when we're doing our lead resourcing. So here we've got, direct traffic, email marketing, organic search, referrals, whatever. So now that we understand how to track conversion, we can also improve it using that data. Some of the quick keys to improve it, and I realize that we have a limited amount of time here, so I'm not going to talk ad infinitum about this. The first step really is understanding our ideal clients. Who are they? What do they need from us? What are their problems? What are their goals? Now, you probably, all of those of you who have marketing awareness, know that marketing people call this personas, that it does go a lot deeper than that. It goes far beyond just the basic persona work into a deep dive into what we call the buyer index. I always say that the best time to deal with an objection is before it comes up. So, for example, if you know that a person is always going to say, yes, but can I use this service with this many people in my team? You don't wait for them to ask you that. You say, and the wonderful thing is you can use this service with all of the people in your team. Or if they're always going to say, oh, I can't, you have a problem with the decision makers not in the meeting. I have to go to the board now, I have to go to the decision maker. You make sure that before you set up that meeting, you find out exactly who's got to be there, what their roles are, and give them a call to action that will make them want to be there so the decision makers are there. So the best thing to do is to preempt everything. Think about this a little bit like a game of chess. I'm not a particularly good chess player. I'm not terrible, but I can hold my own. But I've learned a few methods by the grandmasters, right? There's books you can buy which teach you all the steps because they've preempted everything that could possibly happen. What we're wanting to do is preempt all of the buyer's thought processes. What this means is that when we take the buyer on the journey, they don't have to do a lot of thinking, because we're answering them in advance for everything we need. We're providing them with what they need. They'll burn less calories and they'll make their decisions in real time. And that will speed up a sales cycle and take out all the friction. Good selling is not selling. Good selling is understanding people, communicating with them effectively, value effectively, and helping them to reach a solution. And sales is often considered a very dirty word, and I don't particularly like it. But if I use a different word, you won't know what I'm talking about. So I'm using the word sales. But really, client acquisition particularly it's a human thing, and it's very much about understanding them. It's not about products. So one of the ways that we can make this client-first focused journey very consistent is supporting it with customized touch points and assets. So, for example, in our sales process, we have various conversations and meetings and proposals, but in between there, we send emails. We showcase examples. We might share a video. We might use an ROI calculator, or, we might showcase a cost-benefit analysis, various things that we could do. And those things can be built into our sales process so that if I, the founder, no longer want to do the selling, someone else has got a roadmap to do it really well through all the steps and all the stages. And again, we use the data to address the drop-off points. So it could be that we know that from leads from marketing source, they need more of something or a different conversation initially to leads of a referral source. When we look that up through the data, we change that bit. And the data should always be used to manage ourselves and manage anyone else who's selling on behalf of our business. Okay, so that's that area. There's a lot more I could say about this, because this is a big thing. But the point is, whatever you start with in conversion metrics, you can tweak them up. So a quick example of a client we worked with recently. I've redacted it a little bit, but it's almost exactly their data. So before we started, they had about the same number of inquiries as 4 months later. But their particular sales process starts with an initial assessment, and then those people who need more work get a scoped work piece, and those who don't are happy and go away. There's an assessment price and an average scope work price. They were getting about 44K in monthly revenue because the conversion to assessments was 16.5. And then the conversion to scope work was 37.5. We did the things that I said here and made it a very client-focused journey for them. And the move from inquiries to assessments went up to 41 and to scoped work to 56. So without having to change their leads at all, they were able to increase their monthly revenue by 338%, right? Add another $100,000 on, which is over $1 million, well over $1 million, 1.2 a year. So that's the power of knowing what's going on and being able to measure it and fix it. That said, and this is all very well you're saying, but what about the leads, right? So I know I need X number of leads now. That's all very helpful, but how do I get those leads? Well, that's a little bit out of the scope of this particular conversation, but I did want to touch on it because it's a big stumbling block for a lot of people. I feel like a lot of people, particularly when we're starting up, we're not quite sure how to connect with our community, and we try a number of things. All of these things are valuable, but they all have pros and cons. So outbound is hard work, and whether you're doing it yourself or getting someone to do it, it's expensive in time. Not everyone likes being outreached to, and that's certainly an issue because we want to pull people towards us, not push anything onto them. Marketing does that, it pulls people, but it involves assets, setup, strategy, clarity on your messaging, good branding, upfront costs, and then you've got to allow some time and testing before it really works. And then finally, we've got networking and casual referrals, which, you know, you can have a spike, you go to a specific trade event, you get a lot of people, and then nothing for a few months, or you might get a casual referral 3 times in a row and then nothing for a few months. So it's fantastic, but somewhat unpredictable. So what I would recommend to you guys is to create active partnerships, because that's rapid, it's successful. And I want to know, do people understand what I mean by active partnerships at this stage? If anyone has any questions, please go for it. Otherwise, I'll just keep talking. Okay, so active partnerships. For example, what we do for clients is thank you, Thomas, we build conversion engines, sales engines for businesses. So client acquisition becomes an engine. Thank you, Andrew, I appreciate that. So the active partnerships that we would have, for example, I'll have to turn off the chat for a minute just so I can say this piece because I can't. Jen, you answer the questions. So the active partnerships that would be suitable for us would be a marketing company, because as our clients get better at converting, they want more leads, and we don't do that. So if we have a marketing partner that we really, really trust, and trust is really important, we can have regular meetings with them, we can provide introductions to them, and we can hand over the client to have a good experience with them. Still the client's choice, obviously. And for the same thing for them, they create a lot of leads for their clients, but then they don't have any way to make sure the clients are successfully closing those leads. The client can complain, oh, you're giving us all these leads, but we're not selling anything. Well, we can fix that problem for them. So we have no competitive overlap. We're intrinsically adding value to one another's client base. We have the same ideal clients, and we have the opportunities that each other needs. So it's a very effective way. And there's various types of partnerships. You can partner with organizations, you can partner with individuals, you can partner with associations that are not for profit, wherever your clients congregate and you can add value and there's enough trust to refer. So one of the benefits of creating active partnerships is that there isn't much cost up front, and the results are, the leads are very, very warm once you get this right. Obviously there as well, there's a whole process. You can't just trust anyone with your clients, nor will anyone trust you with theirs. So there's a piece here, but it goes back to the way we humans work, which is in community. We exist effectively to build community. We exist as human creatures, And we trust those around. Like the best way to work with people is a circle of trust, and Active Partnerships builds that for us. And I feel also that, I mean, if you look at us right now, we don't have much of a digital presence. I have to admit, we've been too busy building engines to look after our own marketing, but we get our leads through referrals and partnerships, and obviously it works. So I wanted to then talk to you about what happens. Let's go back to the initial problems. Cash flow. Once we've done this work and we've really broken down our sales to steps and our steps to actions, we can and put in forecasts according to the months and the trends data. Our estimates are far more closely grounded in data. Any salesperson you bring on board will have a higher level of confidence in all of this, and they will see the immediate things they have to do, not just, oh God, they're expecting me to sell this much and I don't even know how. You will also be able to monitor your profit. So our profitability goes, it goes in bumps and stages, as we saw. We'll be able to identify where we want to put our investments, our next hire, even break even for our salesperson, you know, if we're going to hire them, all those sorts of things. And with targets, we know well in advance whether or not we're going to be successful for the quarter. We know by the number of leads we've got, we know by the number of activities that we're having, whether or not our quarter will be successful, and we can manage our people accordingly. And when it comes to scaling, once we've got this in place and it's nicely humming along, it's very easy to go to an investor. Look, this is what we do. This is our process. We have our metrics. This is how long it's going to take to get to here. If we put this many leads in at this end, we'll get this many sales at that end. So Mr. or Mrs. Investor, please provide us with the resources so that we can scale up and realize our vision and achieve what we want to in this world. So your action steps, should you choose to continue with the process that I have outlined, is to break your sales process into steps. You may very likely have done that already. Work out the conversion between stages and start tracking this meticulously. Then reverse engineer your number of leads and activities so that you can figure out your real activity KPIs. And then you can forecast this based on sales cycle, average sale value, and historical data. I've got a sales process tracker in Google Sheets. So I thought I'd run you by that, and then I would ask any questions that anyone might have, if that would be suitable. Is that okay? I'll take that as an okay.
I think so. There's a few questions here in the chat, and it's always good to I mean, I know there's an answer, but always good to
yeah.
Too.
Okay. Did you mean for partnerships or the overall approach? DTC business. Yeah, Julian, maybe. Did you mean partnerships or the overall approach when you were asking a question? Here's a new message coming in. I was wondering about I think you answered it. Okay, that's good. I'm glad I answered it. You know, you can think outside of the box, because I have seen a high-end jewelry company and a high-end furniture company very effectively be partners for each other and run events for each other and do things. It's amazing what you can do. What they have, their clients have in common is luxury and nice things and so on. So basically, everyone in Climate Salad has a very similar purpose, right? We're all here to make a difference to the world and its position at the moment. So you should have right pickings for partnerships. What you need to do is really align to who does your solution complement, and who can you trust and work with on a regular basis, and you will find and open those doors. Are there any others that I've missed? And yes, lots of potential partnerships on this call, Johanna. I fully agree. Oh, and that's not where I wanted to go. I wanted to go here. So I'll just quickly show you this document here. So I will just pop this tracker into the chat now. Anyone who wants it, just make a copy and you can use it. Those of you who don't, just set up your thing in the CRM. That's plenty good enough. Now, what we have here is put your clients in here. I've put lots of fake companies in just to give you a bit of an example of how to use it. Put their details in. Make sure that you put in there the lead source, add any other lead sources that you want to this. I've just got a few here. Then as they go through the stages, you just put the date in of when it happened. So you've got your lead stage, you've got your connect stage. We've broken it down a bit so that any little activities that happen under connect can also be documented, not just the overall connect. This will help you when you're refining your process to see where your conversions are dropping off. So these stages can all be edited, just make them what you want them to be. And the conversion rate per mini stage will be documented down here. And as you get to the end here, you can put some notes in as well. Just keep them up to date. It's the free version of CRM. It's a lot better than nothing, infinitely better than nothing. What it will do also is give you your overall conversion rate as well as your lead to sale, your stages. It will track your income and it will give you your average sale value, which is also useful. So I hope that's helpful, and everyone feel free to make the most of that. And I would love feedback on that, and to know, that it was useful to you. You can also set up charts and pivot tables off this so that you can have the visuals and the dashboards that we said before. So we've got a few minutes left, so I'll just quickly talk to you about me. My background, I was in marketing publishing for many, many years in North Queensland. I have dedicated my last few years of my life to sales process marketing, I call it, which is really the strategy behind client acquisition and how to understand people and how to communicate to them as effortlessly as possible. And our small companies work for many much larger companies as well as many SMEs, and being the wind beneath their wings. I have yet to update all that on our social media, but that is coming. Maybe next year we'll look at our own marketing. What I'd like you to know about me is that I'm passionate about working for businesses that are founder-led, trying to change the world and do something useful. One of our biggest clients is working on changing the Australian dairy industry and turning it organic, and from there all other farming. And they've got a fantastic platform, and it's very exciting for me to work in that field. If anyone wants to get in touch with me, here are my details. Feel free to call me or email me, and I will provide you with further assistance. Now, anyone who has questions, I will answer them. Okay, so.
Richie's got a good question there. Did you want to come off mic and ask that one?
Yeah, so specifically for service-related businesses where you're not dealing with a set product with a set price, so it's really customizable depending on what the organisation requires. How would this type of re-engineering work, and how would you structure that?
That is an incredibly good question, and will relate to a lot of people. I think that what you need to do is, if you've got data, historical data on the size of sales, you can usually group them into different buckets. So, for example, we have a website client who they have a medium sort of customizable service that usually comes out at a certain price. Then they have the small clients that want a little bit less, and they have the large clients who want heaps of stuff and it's really customized. What they've done is they've created an average sale value for each of those buckets, as well as how many of their how many of their leads tend to be for each of those types of clients. And they've used those average sale values and lead quantities to reverse engineer their figures. Does that answer you sufficiently?
Yeah, it does, because we're kind of in that same boat. We've got products and services, but we find that sometimes a smaller business, the conversion time takes longer than larger business sometimes.
Much
depending
longer
on who you're dealing with.
sometimes.
Yeah, for a lot less. So it's just trying to find a balance there, I guess.
And that again goes back to understanding your ideal clients, Richie, a really important point. It may be that you really need to, you'll help everyone, but you may need to focus your efforts on those medium clients who are ready to make the decision. And that's part of your qualification criteria, part of what you do when you look for partners, it's part of the messaging, etc. Or maybe you need to tailor the offering for the smaller businesses differently, including the conversation and the journey. One of the things that's really valuable is what we call a bridge product or a bridge offering. I'll aim to give you, okay, the same website client that I talked to you about before. He used to make, they're more expensive than many competitors because they have a lot of high value quality stuff there that they do. He'd often put a lot of work into a plan and a proposal, and he'd put it out there, and then the client would take it and either disappear and he'd never hear from them again, and then he'd find they took it to the competitor who built it cheaper but used all his plan ideas, or they would show up, like call him 8 weeks later and say, I need it built tomorrow, both of which was inconvenient. So what we did was build a bridge for him, which was a small step, which was basically a website consultation. It's $500. It was nothing for them to commit to, but by committing to that, they were able to get all that value from him of how the competitors are ranking and what colors to use on their website and what the structure should be, without it being a waste of his time and energy. And then it was much easier for them to build trust and relationship and move to the next step of going ahead with that, that commitment, because they understood each other and the expectations were aligned. That could help you with smaller clients, potentially. Anyone else have any questions at all?
We'll just jump in. We've got 2 questions that haven't been answered from the chat, Dalila.
Okay.
So one was from Andrew. Process stages speaks to the value of structure. My question is, based on your experience, where do you see the biggest bang for your buck in terms of innovation of approach at each stage?
Oh, what a wide and far-reaching question. Okay, so one of the biggest, well, how do I even speak to that? The biggest bang for buck at each stage. One of the things that we love to do is look for the blue ocean in your overall service model, right? So is everyone aware of what blue ocean means? Shall I give a quick 30 seconds on that? Okay, quick. So just in case anyone doesn't, blue ocean is, if you think about a competitive environment, the red ocean is where there's lots of fish and sharks swimming around and blood in the water. The blue ocean is where it's nice and quiet and you can be the only big fish swimming around. The idea is we're looking for blue ocean, which is we're not competing, we're different. And the very first thing we do is productize the service offering to really understand all the layers of intangible value that you're offering to buyers, and then find a way to message that in such a way that you're creating blue ocean. This is really important because the value stack, and particularly intangible layers of value, are the things that people find hard to understand. Probably one of the most frustrating things that can happen in sale is you're talking to a client, you know their solution is right for them, you know you can help them, but they're not getting it. They don't understand all the things that they should be understanding. That's a very frustrating place to be. So once we've delineated our value stack, we build it into a framework. And that framework could be a delivery framework, it could be a model of some kind. And we use that particularly so at the presentation stage, but also through discovery, etc., in order to express the value at the end. It's also a benchmarking system, for example. So if I have a look at a client, we have a client that one of our very first companies that we worked for, they built homes, they built nationally, they built new homes from kits, but they were architecturally designed, gorgeous things. And so we created the dream framework for them, which was design, refine, enable, assemble, and move in. And at each of those stages, we made sure we hit all the decision criteria that the client wanted. And we put that in from the very first touch point, which they got before their first conversation. Let's design your first home. Cost you nothing, you're going to get to talk to someone. And then, right, you've now done the design stage. How about we refine this and outlined all the layers of value and problems that they were solving all the way along. Sorry, I know that's a rough answer, but I'm trying my best at an ad lib situation here. And there's a lot that you can do. For example, another way to get big bang for buck and another innovative thing is ROI calculators. Lots of our offerings contain intangible value. We worked for a client that did like reference checks online. That saved hundreds of hours. It did lots of other things, but those things were difficult to put into value. But once we create an ROI calculator, you could put in the hours that were saved, you could put in the time that was saved, all sorts of things, and it would become tangible. Okay, I see more messages.
Yeah, we've got a really interesting one from Joel just pop up, but I also wanted just to go back to something that Julian has asked.
Yes.
So do you find that there are certain objections at each stage of the cycle? and so certain assets that work best, or are the objections and assets to assist with conversion pretty much the same across the process?
There are certainly certain ones that come up industry-wide, and there are also a lot that don't, that are specific to you. You know, a lot of people, if they're doing outbound, will find it very difficult to get past a gatekeeper. So you have to have a really compelling reason why that gatekeeper needs to put you through to whoever it is that you need to speak to. Another one that happens a lot is you might have a fantastic discovery or initial conversation with someone, but they're not the top someone or the only someone that needs to make the decision. So showing up to a presentation without the decision makers is a recipe for problems. And we need to do everything we can to make sure the decision makers show up in that presentation stage. Another thing we see a lot of is people sending off proposals without getting a verbal yes. The time to close the deal is in the presentation. We should be taking them through every single aspect of their thinking, and they should say yes, or they should say, well, no, I need this, this, and this, and we should work on that. Then we send the proposal, not, okay, well, you've seen all that, I'm going to send you the proposal and I hope you sign it. That's just making work for yourself, and I've seen a lot of businesses do that. Other things that come up a lot is price. So I think we need to get ahead of that every single time and lead with all the value that people are going to get out of this service. Talk only in ranges until we have established that value, because if they just get a hard figure and they don't even know all the stuff that you're going to do for them, they're just going to shut the door, because who's got money to throw around? Any others, Jen, that you think I should cover?
So we've got the one from Joel. So if
Yes.
there are limited third-party examples to demonstrate to potential clients for a projection value-added service, would you have any suggestions on how to demonstrate your potential ROI?
Oh, okay, very good. So we tend to build ROI calculators a lot in our asset building. One of the things that you need to start doing, and I mean, I don't know your specific, let me just read this. I don't know your specific circumstances, but okay, we had a large company, a scaffolding company, national scaffolding company, did these huge scaffolding deals to get people down mines or across bridges or, you know, across the national highway, stuff like that. They often charged 2 or 3 times more than their competitors because they were so innovative. But they saved their clients a ton of money, because a competitor might scaffold a tower all the way up like this. They'd find a way to do like this little thing around the top. I can't even explain it properly, but they just had different ways. They were very blue ocean. Now they could charge a lot more, but they were able to showcase, if you did it the normal way, it would cost you this, in terms of your internal hours, in terms of your internal effort, in terms of your risk. Whereas, yes, it costs you more to use us, but you're saving all these internal hours, effort, risk, etc. It starts with a breakdown of your intangible value, and then you have to put a dollar figure on each thing. So if you're providing a service that means their HR person spends 1 less hour a week and their HR person costs $100 an hour, you can easily figure out what that is in dollars. Does that make sense? So you have to go granular and think about every single thing that your offering is going to do for them. ROI calculator can then be put in with a number of fields, and you can take them through it and they can come up with a number. It's a very powerful and effective way of making a sale. Please let me know if that's not a sufficient answer, because I can keep talking. Pleasure. Yes, I agree. Gamification is big. It's also fun. Like, if anyone hasn't read The Great Game of Business, I would encourage you to read it. It's all about, you know, taking your team on the ride of everyone thinking like an innovator and an entrepreneur, and everyone gamifying every part of the business and rewarding everyone for the growth as well. And, you know, if you haven't got a CRM, I would probably encourage you to get one. That said, there is no excuse for not tracking all the data in our sales. And if we don't do it, and then, like, most of us start off by selling our own services and products, and we're actually better at it than we think, because we speak from the heart and we know the value and we understand the results that it gets. We bring in a salesperson, we think that they're going to do better because, hey, they're a salesperson, that's what they do for a living. Actually, they don't know the results, they don't know the value, they're ground zero. So we have to create all that for them. And this is the first step, the metrics, and then all the assets, and what happens in each stage. We create that, we can replace ourselves and we'll give them a leg up. So I'm so glad. Thank you all very much for those nice comments, and I'm glad it was helpful. It's first time talking to you guys, so thank you. And I suppose another thing I wanted to say, if people are interested further in partnerships, because there was a few questions there, I might ask Charlotte, and maybe we could do another one specifically on partnerships and how to set those up effectively. So if you are interested in that, let me know. If leads is something that you need to increase from a warm referral type of basis. So that's.
Do you have another question? Sorry.
Oh, do you have any thoughts on automated sales funnels versus those that require a lot of people input? Automated sales funnels are fantastic. They're suitable for, smaller products or products where there isn't a huge commitment. You can use them for all sorts of things. I've seen some pretty powerful funnels built in my time. I think the thing about them is they take time, money, effort, strategy, testing. So while that's happening, you also need sometimes to make sales other ways. And there's a lot of businesses, particularly we have a client who has a SaaS platform building. He builds SaaS platforms basically. And, there's a growth-led model and a sales-led model. The growth-led model with all the funnels and the things that just pull you towards them is built on the side, but the sales-led model drives the initial sales because you need money in the door to fund the resourcing. So, I'm sorry I can't keep track of all of these questions. There's lots of comments and
we just had a little amendment from Julian sort of talking about whether the CRM can track who's sending what, sending assets, etc. So I think you've kind of covered that. And then just had a few people who all seem pretty interested in a partnership session as well. Oh, fantastic. Well, yeah, maybe we can talk about CRMs as well, because CRMs can be the bane of people's existence, or they can be incredibly helpful and useful tool that saves you a lot of time and money and comes as close to automating the human process as possible without it feeling automated. For example, that scaffolding company I told you about, they used to reply to a lot of tenders. We built them a tender pipeline. We had a system where if they replied to a tender for a bridge, it would automatically put the nice bridge email together with the nice bridge case studies and later the nice bridge proposal. It was all designed for the bridge people, saved a lot of time. If it was a different dam company, it would do all the dam stuff. So sound like I'm swearing, but I'm not. But yeah, so those sorts of things are semi-automated, even though they're human powered. And yeah, I love automated sales funnels. There's a lot to be said for them. But I think what's happening is marketing. A lot of people put a lot of energy into their marketing, like they really, really do. And I'm not against that, but I feel like they have to start from sales. Systemize your sales and conversion first. That's where you're going to get all the messages that you need your marketing people to use anyway. That's where you're going to productize and get the value essence, the value proposition that the marketing people won't understand unless you've done that work in sales first. And then when you do get leads from marketing, funnels, whatever, you can make the most of them if there's a human element. And, the high value, high conversion sales, people want to speak to someone. There's a lot of bits and pieces, and a lot of us are in that boat. So, that high complex sales environment needs to be engineered as a journey. And that's engineering. It sounds cold. It's actually a very kind thing to do for your clients because it makes their life easy. They don't have to think so hard. They can just get what they need, understand the value, and get it going. And so it's good for everyone. Are we over time? We're all right? No, perfect. Okay, so any further questions at all from anyone? Using the CRM to understand who's interacting and who isn't. Yes. Like if you look at a CRM like HubSpot, HubSpot Marketing, HubSpot Sales are connected, you can see who's shown up at your website, who's opened your white papers, all of that sort of thing. And you can even deal score inside of your sales pipeline so that the ones who are highly active get a green little tick, whereas the ones who haven't done anything don't, so you know which to prioritize, for instance. So there's a lot you can do with sales and marketing in tandem through the CRM. So let me have a look to see who else has a question. we've covered off all the questions, I think.
Okay, perfect. Yes, I agree. Sales process is critical. Thank you, Kirk. And yeah, I think I've covered everything. So this is the moment in which I've run out of steam. So
it's all good. We're almost at time anyway. So, it's always great when you give another couple of minutes back. But of course, as long as you post in the chat how to get in contact. But thank you so much for this session. And thank you so much for all your questions. You have a few more minutes left to finish your lunch, everyone.
yeah, and thank you very much for your time today. I hope it was highly valuable. And I would really encourage you to start reverse engineering your growth.
And I can see everybody's busy in that template. So thank you so much for sharing.